Welcome to our podcast, This Life, the Chronicles of Autism Mums. I'm Alison Saraf, and I'm joined each week by amazing women who happen to have children on the spectrum. We talk about navigating the ups and downs of parenting kids with autism and how that affected us and our lives as women, professionals, and mothers. Strap in, grab some tissues. Sometimes you'll cry from empathy and others from laughter. Join us on our journey of This Life. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of This Life podcast brought to you by Learn Autism. This week we are going to be talking about how to get the best out of your kids' SEN team. So thank you for joining me today, ladies. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
It's right. So, we'll just get started because I think this is quite an emotive topic, especially for me. And I'm not sure about you ladies, but I know that with our, kids' SEN teams, and when I say SEN teams, I mean educators, therapists, pediatricians, or anybody in your kind of close circle of your 360 kind of team that you work with and closely, and who works closely with your child. So I think that to kind of set the record straight, it just depends on where you live as to who chooses that team. So sometimes people in that team get allocated to you, or, sometimes we might be paying people privately and we might be able to pick and choose. So I think if you're in that situation, either situation is always difficult. It's a bit of a relationship, isn't it? It's like any new relationship, choosing somebody to fit into that team. You never really know how it's going to go, if it's going to be a rocky one. You can start out with the best of intentions, but maybe they don't fit with the rest of the team, or maybe they're not quite what you expected them to be, or, their CV is not reflecting, what their kind of output is. So I just wanted to start maybe with Moira. What is your experience of, getting your kind of son's team together? And, how have you in the past, or have you achieved a team working efficiently together?
Well, from the beginning, we just assumed that Callum just needed speech. So it was just a speech therapist we were looking for.
Yeah.
And even with just the one therapist, we went through several of them.
And why was that? Why did you go through
because
several?
I think more than how qualified they are.
Right.
Because everybody, some are more qualified than others, but everyone is qualified to a level to do the job.
Right.
But more important than that is personality and how they get on with your child. They have to gel to make the session productive.
Yeah. So did you used to kind of sit in on those sessions to find out whether or not you thought Callum was probably getting the best out of the session, or was it based on, obviously he's quite a communicative child, so would you be able to tell?
Well, he wasn't at the beginning,
right? Okay.
Which is why, and it was all new to me. So yeah, I did sit in for the most part, except the one who saw him in nursery, and it was all new to me, so I didn't really know what I was looking at or what to base it on or anything. But as time went on, then he went to EI, and he had ABA first, and I don't think I even thought about the gelling of all the therapists together at the beginning.
Yeah.
I thought they all had different roles to play,
so
and maybe they didn't.
Disciplines, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then he went to EI, and of course they were all there, and he was allocated, and I didn't choose, and it was all fine. So then when he came out of EI to go to mainstream, then I had to figure out what therapies he was going to continue. And we did, it took a few goes until I found the ones that I were having more knowledge and experience, the ones that I felt were benefiting him most.
Right. So, but how do you think you go about identifying primarily? We're obviously not talking necessarily about identifying the right therapist for your child today, but more about, how did you identify that a team was more important than just having individuals working with your child kind of independently. How did you figure out that it was, it was critical to have, and is it critical? Do you think now is it critical to have a team that work together?
Yeah, of course. And when he was in EI and all the therapists were under one roof and they would talk amongst themselves about each child.
Right.
And each of them would be working on, maybe they would all be working on the same theme, but in their own areas. And obviously when he goes to school, they can't be working in silos. The therapist should be working on the same content that the teachers are working on. So there's consistency and what's the word the transference of skills in different situations.
Yeah. So it's a transferring of skills, and it's trying to get those skills kind of laid out in every kind of environment and every kind of situation.
So I tried to make sure that the teacher had contact with the therapist,
right,
and vice versa.
And
but it wasn't a regular thing, and I probably had to instigate it.
Yeah. Okay. What was your experience of how you've Reen, obviously, you were in a situation from a time when there wasn't so much early intervention here, so you couldn't get all of those services in one place. So I would imagine that you're kind of more of a veteran of trying to get all of these people kind of together and working together. What did you find the hardest thing about it, and how did you identify that it was important?
I think at the end you realize that you're the project manager for your child, because no one's going to take charge of him. I mean, everything is all, everybody works individually everybody's very silo, right? So, and no one was talking to each other because all your therapists are not from one center.
Did they, sorry to interrupt, but did they ever say to you, this is a really good idea if I speak to this person or this person, so that those skills can be kind of transferred across to all of these different areas, so that you're all working on the same thing? Because in my head now, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But actually at the time when I was kind of new to all this, like Moira said, I would have probably imagined that those individualized skills wouldn't have been important to be able to put them together. So, did any one therapist say to you, this is a really good idea if I talk to like the ABA therapist or the speech therapist or the occupational therapist?
I think it did not basically occur to them, but it did quickly occur to me that they need to be talking to each other, because there's no point I have a plan for him in school, but then it's not executed throughout, throughout his entire day, or it's not being, so the teacher must put in something, the therapist must put in something, the teacher must know what the therapist is doing, so, and to see that he's actually applying it in school as well.
Even if it's something as simple as like handwriting. So if you've got like a fine motor skill, then majority of the time that is an occupational therapist's kind of domain. But the majority of the time, as an example, they're using pencil. If they're not typing, they're using, they're writing in school. So that should be transferred across, right? And then if, for example, they don't particularly like using or writing or trying to write because maybe it hurts or maybe it's not very comfortable for them, then maybe that's something that the behavioral therapist needs to work on. So that's that's a really good example, isn't it, of why like that should work as a 360.
It's really very important. And then, so everything so for example, like what the speech therapist is doing, what the OT is doing, the psychologist on board needs to know, and she could actually prepare his learning plan for the school to adopt what needs to be done at school. So everybody needs to meet, and once every few months, or at least talk to each other, and what's happening and what are the success stories and what we need to take out from his plan and what we need to put into his plan.
And when you first suggested that, because it sounds to me like you were the one that kind of instigated this kind of team effort rather than working individually. How did you suggest it to them that they should all be working together, and what was their reaction?
I think that the therapists were all on board because they could see the benefit for the child.
Were you shocked that they hadn't suggested it to you? Or is it just like one of those things with all of this stuff with our kids, it just kind of goes over our head because it's like, what's another thing that I need to do? You just take that on board and think, well, okay, fine.
Right.
You know, you're a veteran parent now, so you're used to kind of picking up the slack and kind of bringing situations together and like project managing it.
But I think because everybody is busy, everybody has their own thing, and because no one comes in from, like I said, they're not in one clinic, they're not in one center. Everybody is doing their own thing, and so maybe the thought was not there to begin with, but they were very open. They were very happy to actually be working together, to pass notes to each other, because they know that it's important. It's for the child's benefit. It's not for anyone else. And then we brought it to school. So I think school slowly accepted that they would need to do this.
So is that the toughest part for you, was getting the school on board?
To get them agree, but because you are being backed up by specialists, so the school is more receptive to what you want.
I think that's quite an interesting point, actually, because when I think the majority of the situations that seem to occur, certainly within our group of friends and kids that have autism, is the fact that it generally tends to be the school that we struggle most with, because it seems like our team of therapists and specialists understand what's required more so, and putting it into an educational setting is actually harder for whatever reason that might be. So I think that's a very interesting point. So if you are trying to kind of get your team together, or to try and make positive changes, and to encourage that kind of 360 approach with transferable skills, then you would recommend that one of the best ways to do that is to kind of get those professionals together and back it up with evidence, and then take it to
the next level. Get them on board, get them in sync. Make sure that you have everything that you need to actually speak to the school with them.
And Huma, what is your experience of maybe a situation with a team or your team when it's not gone quite to plan and it's not going your way, and how you see it going?
Well, I think we started off, it just feels like that we started off at a time when this country was still coming to terms with this idea of having these additional resources in school. And I remember going to my son's school and talking to the principal and telling her that he will have an ABA therapist slash LSA slash shadow teacher coming with him. So all rolled into one. And she was, for her, it was an alien idea that what's a shadow teacher? What's autism? What is happening? She was like, I'm intruding into her territory. And I was like, no, this will actually be beneficial for you. You will have additional help of a professional. She will totally, help my son. Your teacher won't have to struggle. So we started off at that point where just...
So you didn't start off in a kind of good place?
No, but I was lucky that I had, we were lucky to secure some good professional help, but it was like there was no team. We had to, I was like, you can say I'm in a supermarket and I had to pick and choose, okay, I need this. And then at that point, you're so desperate, you just want everyone to you just want those professionals to give you the hours that, okay, can I have these many hours from you? Can I have these many hours from you? And then I think there was once a time that we tried to get them all together. But luckily, I mean, this is such a small place that they kind of knew each other anyway. So they were the ABA therapist and the speech, they were working together. They compared notes.
And was that down to your communication? Was that down to you kind of helping and assisting that? Because, why do you think that there was the pushback with the school to begin with? Why do you think that there was kind of like, a territory issue? There was a defensiveness, it seems like. What do you think caused that?
I think it has to do with, I think people resist change. And maybe it's also a cultural thing, because where we live, it's hard to accept changes so quickly. So you have to have an open mind. And I was really grateful that being in the place that we are, they were able to accept that okay, we'll make these changes.
So you helped them. You helped them
Yes.
to understand. So it was your communication and you bringing people that were professional.
Yes.
To kind of help them to understand that they were being supported. You weren't trying to take over their kind of roles.
Yes.
So it's interesting actually, because we try our best to kind of get our teams together. And I know that at the start of every year, or I have done previously when Noah's been in a mainstream school, it makes me quite nervous the few weeks before the start of the school year, because I'm already thinking, if we happen to, and we've had a couple of changes, of shadow teacher, like LSA, learning support teacher. And, you don't necessarily always know what you're going to get. So what you see on a CV or who you're introduced to is not necessarily, in my experience, what we are, what we find. And I always find it an interesting dynamic. I think interesting is probably not the quite word. I dread the dynamic often between teachers and shadow teachers and therapists, because I feel like in the real world there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of people that are not probably that aware, like the people at the school that you were talking about that didn't know anything about it, and so therefore they kind of get defensive about the situation. And then there's a kind of kink in that chain where we've all identified of how important it really is for these people to be working together. Okay, ladies, so share away your best experiences of shockers. Who's first? I know you've all got them. Come on.
Looking at me.
I don't think I've had
You haven't?
shocker. Well, to be fair, I think we were quite lucky. When we went to mainstream, we were allocated a shadow, and we had the same shadow for 4 years.
Come on, Moira. Spill the dirt.
Is that good or bad? He got very used to her. They worked well. She really cared about him. They had a good relationship.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But at the end, we felt it was better to part ways.
There was just some complacency there.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
something fresh, something new.
we had the issues with the school and how the school treated the LSAs, and the coordination between the teacher and the LSA wasn't always as it should be.
Yeah.
We were kind of out on a limb.
Yeah. So I'll just ask that. So Reen, what's your best and your worst?
Yeah. So we were dumped by our shadow.
That's dumped, everybody. Dumped.
Yeah, dumped by our shadow teacher late at night. So probably I received a text from her. I actually received a text from her the day before saying that she was going for an interview, and I knew she was looking for something. But we had a not to say a deal. We had an agreement that should I pay her an X amount, she would stay for the term. So when she was saying that I need to go for an interview, I was like, all right, fine, because I knew she was looking for something else. But in the back of my head, she would still be here for the term, and I would still have time to look for someone else should she get the job. And I didn't expect it to be, something immediate. But the next day, she texted me while I was going to bed and said that I'm not coming in tomorrow because I just got this job and I need to start immediately. And I'm like, didn't you tell your employee that you're with someone and at least you need to give notice? And she says, oh no, this is a too important of a job that I have to start immediately, else I would lose it.
Right. So hang on a minute. So she negotiated with you in the first place to ensure that you had to pay her more money to stay, to finish.
To finish, yeah.
And then she just decided to take another job without any worry for your son and how the fact that he wasn't going to be able to go to school the next day.
No. So she just said, I'm really sorry, but I have to leave, else I lose this job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, would you just be able to negotiate with your new employee that you stay maybe at least a week until I can sort this out? And because tomorrow is going to be crazy. What am I going to do tomorrow, right?
And what did she say?
And she said, no, they really want me to start immediately.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Did you send him to school?
I had to send him to school. I had to, I did send him to school. I said, can we just try this for today, and I'll try to sort something out immediately. And thank God, like that same day or the day after, I managed to get someone. And she started immediately, but basically with no training, nothing, but at least a heads up on what she needs to do, and we followed up. The point was to have somebody, but it was just crazy that someone can just leave you just like that without a thought of being considerate that you have. I mean, you're not working with any child; you're working with a child on the spectrum with the requirement that they need to have an aid in school. It's not for me, it's for my child. At least think about that. Giving me at least 2-3 days would at least be better than nothing. But obviously that didn't happen.
What about you, Huma? Any shockers? Did you get dumped by text?
Not by text, but
To my face.
like the first one. The first one decided, like she told us in there's a saying in Urdu, like putting the gun on someone's shoulder and then firing it, like you're taking someone else's support by firing your own gun. But we were in a meeting and she told us that she will not be our shadow anymore. And I said, why are you doing this in a meeting when there's a principal and a therapist and everyone? Aren't you supposed to be on my side? Can't we do this privately? But it happened like that, and we just had to accept that. And then the next one, she decided to work for the school. She said, I got a job offer from the school, I'm working. I said, but you're my shadow. How can you work for the school? But that is a better offer.
This is the thing, but it's so grossly unfair. All of this is just piled on parents, and it's just not right. It's, for me as a parent, who we always struggle anywhere to find good, reliable, quality services in whichever kind of jurisdiction of that kind of educational therapy kind of 360, I always feel that we need to keep a really kind of close tabs on what's happening, because it's not fair. It's and as Reen said, you're not doing it to you. You're doing it to your 8-10-year-old child, your child who is reliant on that particular person to be able to go to school every day.
I mean, you would think that before I got into all of this thing, I used to think that people are compassionate and they have they'll do the education system and they'll do anything for kids, it's for the kids. But no, it doesn't work that way. It's a job. If they get a better offer, they will leave. And some of course, I'm not saying like everyone is bad. I mean, there are people who they do give 100 and like they do try their best,
but it's the luck of the draw, isn't it? You don't get a consistency, and I think that's the thing. So with that said, do you think that part of the issue, because we've all had a lot of instability, I think that's probably the most polite way of putting it, and it does put a huge amount of pressure on us as parents. One, because we obviously feel children have a right to an education, our kids need to be in school, and I know a lot of our situations have changed, but during that period of time, they weren't allowed to attend school without that support in place. So I'm just interested to kind of really, I always find I'm at this point in my life where I'm always trying to understand people's actions, and I really struggle to do that. And actually, as I get older, I find it more frustrating when I don't understand why somebody reacts in the way that they do. And I kind of try and search all the time to kind of find a reason. And I wonder whether or not the people that we've experienced, and there's a lot out there, and as you said, Huma, there's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of people that really don't give a crap. And, you know, one, they shouldn't be in the jobs that they're in if that's the case, because one, these jobs they don't reward you in payment, but they should, you know, if you're a good fit for that job in any sort of field, that it should be kind of rewarding. But I wonder whether or not they feel valued. I wonder whether or not they feel like, do you think that they understand the value that they bring?
You know, sorry, I just wanted to say, when you were saying something just popped up in my head that like not everyone is cut out for this job, or you know, not related to my LSA, but my LSA told me I ended up having a really nice LSA. He was a male LSA, very rare in these situations, very hard to find because of the laws in this country. It's hard to employ a male LSA. But anyway, so and there's another child in the class who has an LSA with him, and for some reason she hates me. I don't know why. And even though I've never talked to her, I've never interacted with her, but I think she doesn't like my son. And then my LSA told me that she was saying that when they were sitting in the class and she was going, just look, she's talking about my son. She was saying, just look, he's going to do something. He's going to do something. He's going to get into trouble. He's going to do something. And I was like, why this hatred? I've bumped into her so many times. We're alone in the elevator. We're alone in the toilet. And I just feel these negative vibes. And I was like, my son hasn't done anything to you. And like he's very playful. He's very funny. And one time the LSA was sick. So I had to shadow my son. In those rare circumstances, the school allowed it. And I stayed with him. And but she did not know that I was there. So he entered first and I came in later. And my son was playing with her student. And he was just joking around. And she shouted at him that I'm going to report you to the principal. And then she turned and she looked at me and then she quieted down. And I was like, why? Is she even fit enough? I mean, I don't know what goes on behind my back. And I just, you know, that image that I had in my mind that the people in the education system will wholeheartedly embrace these children and they will have compassion for them because, you know, their special needs, they're extra special. That has all been shattered, you know, it just...
I think that's one of these situations where this person has clearly not been in education, come off the street just looking for a job, any job, and hasn't been trained, hasn't got the empathy for the job.
But the education system does not embrace them. They put in all these conditions that at the end, I let your child into school, but he needs to meet all these conditions. And it's not even, you know, it's not recognizing the child has a challenge or a need that they need. It's like, you meet this condition, basically, you're just like any other children. So...
And like you said, I think it's a very good point that you made, is the fact that if the school doesn't embrace them as part of their team and part of their, you know, an important part of their team, fundamental, in fact, then they'd feel undervalued. Right. And so if they feel undervalued, then, you know, if you feel undervalued in whatever job you do, if that's as a lawyer or a firefighter or, you know, whatever it is that you do, then you're not going to do your job to the best of your potential. So...
I think a lot of times teachers find any adult, parent, LSA in their classroom an intrusion and a distraction.
Yeah, it's interesting that. I find that a lot myself.
Don't tell me how to do my job, kind of defensive. They're not welcoming support or help.
But there's a disconnect there because I think most of the time I don't think, you know, anyone is there to kind of spy on the teacher because I'm not an educator, so I don't, you know, I don't necessarily know what they should be teaching or how they should be teaching it. I think that there is definitely just a discord there, and the communication is the key. Because I remember the last year that my son was at a mainstream school, I had a meeting with the teacher and the shadow teacher before the start of the year, and she made it very clear to me that how we had operated the year before was not going to happen. And she would update me when she was ready, and she would tell me when she was ready. And it infuriated me to the point that I actually had to have numerous meetings with the school, but I needed to bring in my husband. And normally, fine, he can come, but I don't feel it necessary. I normally am the person that deals with it, but I was so frustrated, angry, and every time something would happen, because it was just like a literal barrier, I would ask questions. I would say, can I have the curriculum a week ahead of time so that we can kind of work on it with a therapist, a special educator that we had coming into the house, because it was COVID and we were homeschooling a bit at the time, so that we can look over it and make changes so that accommodations so that he can do the work. No, you're not doing that. You're not, we're not. So it was literally, there was no...
And it was benefiting nobody.
No, and it was just, it was making me ill, actually, because going back to my original point of the fact that I don't understand people. I don't understand why you would do that. And I think that it's very much down to the fact that there's a lot of, there's a disconnect between parents and, not necessarily therapists, but I think educators, because they don't understand the fact that a parent is not there, and I wasn't trying to take over.
You weren't asking for anything unreasonably.
I wasn't, but also I was trying to support him and in a roundabout sort of way help her and help that whole situation. And I tried in the same situation I've been in the years before. It worked perfectly. And, I wasn't kind of bulldozing the situation or anything, but it just got me to a point where we didn't keep the LSA. I think we made it to Christmas. So I think we made it like 3 months into the year, a school year. And I was like, no, we're out. I requested a change of teacher. We had some very, very serious conversations with the school. And I really stamped my feet, to a point where I would never have spoken to the principal of the school like that. I mean, I had a little hissy fit.
But they gave you no support.
No, they didn't. But
on the side of the teacher, right?
I literally got to a point where I was threatening them, and I would never want to be. And it's not the way that you get what you need. Yeah. But when you try everything else, it just gets you to a point where you feel that you're
backed in a corner.
You are. Your back's against the wall. What do you do? Okay, fine. We'll just leave it another 6 months then, and we'll wait for another teacher, and we'll see what happens. It shouldn't be that way. And I think it's just, when you get to those situations, when everything's going great, it's fine. But I feel like when you get to a point where something's not quite working right for you, and you are relying so heavily on that person to be with your child every day, even if you're going to critique them in any way, it needs to be constructive, because that if they're their lifeline at the end of the day in a school situation. So it's very delicate. It's a very delicate relationship that really, really needs to be nurtured. But
when you look back on it now, because it was horrific at the time, when you look back on it now, do you think you would have done anything differently?
I think I would have acted faster, and I don't think I would have gone around the houses knowing what I know now. And I wouldn't recommend to anyone just to go in like a bulldozer. But now I look back, I see our situation was not short of, it was horrendous. So maybe I would have taken action sooner, and I probably would have been a bit firmer and a bit more direct with what I was suggesting was happening, rather than maybe suggesting that we could do this or do that. Yeah. So I think you've kind of got to play it by ear, really.
What I've noticed out of all these years of therapy and professionals, and we've met a lot really qualified people who are expert in their fields, and I we deal with different peoples of coming from different countries and different nationalities and different levels of professionalism. And what I've seen, what has really helped is compassion. I've met teachers, I've met shadow teachers, I've met therapists who are really compassionate, who have gone beyond their I would say
extra mile.
For the child, and
it's not just a job to them.
It's not, and that has kept me, that has given me hope. even till this day, I think about those teachers who did that for me and for my son, and I'm like, that goes beyond any service that, whatever their CV says, whatever their degree or whatever therapy that they've done, they've told me, oh, you know what, Huma, you don't worry, I've got this. He's in my class, I've got this. And I'm like, those words, they're like, oh my God. And those were enough for me to get me through.
It's the relief as well, isn't it? It's the relief that you feel like somebody's on your side, and not your side, but your son's side.
Yeah.
They're protecting him and nurturing him and teaching him and embracing everything about him.
Yeah. And it's not asking for much. I wasn't asking them for a lot. It's just, sometimes, there are certain schools have rules and you have to follow these certain rules, and therapists have rules and you have to follow this. But sometimes, sometimes you just want to have a little give, just release the rope a little bit.
We need that because they're kids.
Yeah, and they have done that, and that has been, I feel, people should be in education system and therapists, they should be taught this, that it's to be human. We somehow you lose that while on this journey. And that is important.
I think the interesting thing is the fact that when I think about education, I am surprised when someone goes above and beyond. I'm surprised by that, and I'm so grateful. And that shouldn't be the way that it is. We should all be grateful for the help and the support that we get, whatever we're doing in our lives, and whether or not it's my neurotypical kids or whether or not it's Noah. But they're so few and far between often, I think, and our experiences have shown that the people that really have your child's best intention, but that go above and beyond, that it's something that we don't take for granted, because it's not the normal track. And I think that the majority of the time it's actually just from a lack of understanding,
and it's being seen by other students as well in the class. Like yesterday, Emma came back from school and she's like, "Oh, I really love my class teacher." I said, "Why?" Well, there's this boy in the class that he really likes to fidget. So she actually got him something so he could move his legs, while he's doing work. Oh, that's sweet. And this other child who likes to just scribble, so she actually pasted a paper on his desk. So every time he needs to scribble or draw, there's always something, and so he doesn't have to move around the class, and it's always there. So that little changes.
Things, but the kids see that. You're right,
and children notices it.
Yeah, they do.
And that's where you learn empathy. You learn being compassion and understanding, because it's transferred from the top down.
Lead
right?
from example.
So,
absolutely. Okay, ladies. Well, just to round this conversation up, because I think it's very interesting, and for anyone who is listening, it's I think that we'll just share our kind of top tips now, really, about not necessarily our experiences, but how we can give advice to parents. What's your best piece of advice? I've been trying to get that team together. Obviously, we've talked about the good, and then we've talked about the not so good. But not all of our experiences have not all been negative. But I think it's very important that we highlight how we can get the best out of them and what we should look for. So, what's your best piece of advice for somebody that is kind of going through this journey? Obviously, communication, when you've got a team that large, and we're trying to kind of generalize those skills a lot of the time and communicate and keep everybody up to date, it's a full-time job. So what's your best piece of advice, from the experiences that you've had?
I'm in a bit of a dilemma.
Ooh.
Because Callum's got an excellent OT, but it is at the centre where he did EI, and he's been going there since he was 3 years old, and he's now just turned 12. Mm-hmm. And he, as I've discovered, doesn't like being taken out early from school to go there. He wants to stay in school, which is great. And he doesn't like going to this centre because it's for babies, because that's what he associates it with. But she's so good, and they get on so well together. And he does progress and he enjoys it, that and we'll never get another OT like that.
Yeah.
So I'm really reluctant to give it up. We did have a speech therapist there too, but she's now at the school, so I'm happy that he's getting. And again, we settled on the speech therapist because they just got him and they got his playful, imaginative side that they could work into the lesson, turn things around so that he thought he was
In control.
in control and directing. Yeah. And so it took a long time to get to the point where we have therapists that get him and make it worthwhile. So yeah, you just have to go through a lot to find it. And then when you find it, you just have to hold on to it and not...
Yeah, try and hold on to it for as long as possible. Yeah.
So
until it doesn't work, and then
until it doesn't work. Yeah.
then find something new. Right. Yeah. Until you get dumped by text.
Exactly.
Late at night with no hope. Sorry, Reen, what's your advice? Turn your phone off at night.
Yeah.
If they can't find you, they can't
What was it? A burner phone.
I think it's just finding a team that is, resonates with your goals, your mission, your principles, and basically who has a compassion and empathy for your child. And that's just, what is really important. And at the end, because they are the ones that are working with your child. And if they have that, you can move mountains.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Huma.
Yeah, I would go with what Reen said, and that just find, if you're lucky enough to pick and choose, and you find some good people for your child, then that'll help you in the long run. And it's, what I learned, that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to therapists, to teachers. It's okay to change teachers. It's okay to change therapists. If it's not working, they might be really qualified, but sometimes the personalities will clash. Sometimes the pace is not right for you. Mm-hmm. So I know at the start of the journey, everyone is really scared, and no one says no.
You want to settle. You
Yes.
just settle because you think that's
But now when I look back and I think about it, I think that, I should have said no. I should have should have stand up for myself. Mm-hmm. My English is gone.
It made sense. Right.
But so just because it's a long journey. It's a long journey, so don't torture yourself over, don't let people beat you down. That's what I feel after looking back all those years.
Yeah, good advice. My piece of advice is to make friends and influence people. so get to know your team, get to know your therapists, tell them when you like something that they're doing, tell them that they're valued, show an interest, try and follow through so that they know that what they are doing and the effort that they are making is making a difference to you and your child when they're not in the school or in whatever situation that they're in with them, and then just the fact that they matter, and from there, I think you soon get to know them, because you soon figure out getting to know somebody. You think you know them when you interview them or when they start with your child, but just have a quick conversation with them, and just really try and figure out how invested they are in your child and what information they're bringing you on a daily basis and what lengths they're prepared to go to be part of this child's team.
Yeah.
So
I like that part about being friends. I'm ready to bribe my way into anyone's heart.
Bribery, everyone.
I don't care anymore.
The summary from this podcast is bribery and burner phones. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lovely conversation, and thank you for joining us for this live podcast, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for joining this live podcast brought to you by Learn Autism. To learn more about autism, check out their website at learnautism.com. You can download this podcast wherever you find your favorites, and if you prefer to watch us, visit their YouTube channel. However you choose to watch, be sure to give us a top rating and all links below in the description. See you next week, and thanks for listening.